Hello guys, welcome to another virtual science lesson, and today we're going to start a new chapter that will be devoted to landscape. And guys, first of all, what is a landscape? And guys, landscape is basically the set of elements, the way the elements around us look like. There are a few types of landscape depending on where we are, and today we're going to firstly talk about how humans can shape the landscape, how we are capable of changing our surroundings, and then we're going to discuss what different types of landscapes you can find in many various places. Guys, first of all, there is something as natural landscape. And in the past, it was the dominant one. A natural landscape means that it hasn't been touched by human hand, which means that it was entirely natural. In Poland, it was mostly forests with some small areas of natural meadows. But still, those were wild areas that humans had no contact with. But guys, over time, people basically started to settle down. People started to build their homes, and people started to build their homes once they have learned how to cultivate crops, how to create farmlands. So, guys, people built a shelter, built a home, usually a few homes on a certain area because people have always lived together. And guys, when you have a home, you have a few animals with you, you need a farmland. So what happened? It was that people started to cut down trees in order to create space for farmlands. And this has been for many, many years like this. But eventually, more and more people started to live in such settlements, so they needed more space. So they needed to cut down more trees, build more homes, create more farmlands. And then people started to uh, want to travel. So a network of roads was needed. So people started to shape the landscape around them to make it better for them to live. And guys, more people meant more food needed, so we have the need for more farmlands. More roads. So in the landscape that was previously natural, roads started to show. More people meant also they needed more water. So they started to transform natural creeks and streams and rivers into sources of water that they could drink and also that they could use to water their crops. And guys, over time, over ages, the biggest concentrations of people turned into towns, and then towns turned into cities, uh, and eventually into the mega cities. It all started from small villages. The bigger the town is, the bigger the city is, the more transformed the landscape has to be. And guys, here are 5 types of landscape that you will find. So we have a natural landscape here that is mostly or totally untouched by humans. Here we have agricultural landscape that basically consists of plants, but those are very specific plants. Those are farmlands. So as you remember, farmlands were entirely human-made. We have also rural type of landscape, which is basically what a village looks like, urban, which is what a city looks like, and industrial, which is the most transformed type of landscape that we have. So guys, let's discuss them one by one. Agricultural landscape. This type of landscape, as you can see, is mostly natural. I mean, there are only plants, there are no buildings in here, but it's entirely human-made because probably in this area there used to be a forest, and now the forest is gone, and now we have farmlands, and we decide what types of plants will grow in this place. This type of landscape doesn't contain any buildings, any roads, maybe a tiny path somewhere in between, but definitely not those gray asphalt roads. Very few trees grow here, and guys, as you can see, the trees that are present, they grow in between specific farmlands. So guys, in these areas there are trees, but most of this place space is just open. Guys, here is the rural landscape, and this is quite similar to the agricultural one, but this type of landscape also includes buildings, roads, and basically everything that is needed for a village to function. But what you, I hope, notice, those are only single family homes. There are no huge blocks of flats. Those are just tiny buildings with other infrastructure needed for people. So also roads, um, maybe a railway, but usually it's just a road. And it's, of course, surrounded by vast areas of farmlands because farmers live in those villages and they cultivate their crops right behind, right next to their homes. Urban landscape, guys, here are two pictures. I hope that this one you recognize. Of course, this is Warsaw, and here is a picture from a smaller city, Lublin. And guys, this is entirely human-made type of landscape. Like humans did everything, they changed everything that was natural and they altered it accordingly to their needs. What is very characteristic about urban landscape is the fact that the buildings are close to each other. They are also quite tall. There are many roads and there are not as many spaces of green where the trees or other plants grow. Buildings in smaller cities are usually a little bit lower. The standard in Poland is 10, 15 stories for a smaller city. And in the biggest ones, there are skyscrapers, as you can see in the picture of Warsaw. If it comes to green areas in cities, those are either areas that were designed by humans. So we decided that here we will have grass, here we will have trees and so on. So we all planted them. And we have also city gardens, which are bigger areas with surface water, with some kind of ponds or something. And of course, trees and shrubs. And this is also the place where animals have perfect conditions. I mean, perfect, they have conditions to live in the city. And the last type of landscape that we're going to discuss is the industrial landscape. And guys, this is totally degraded and devastated environment that is possible because we are not only changing it into for our needs, but also we are taking something away from the environment in such places. Here in the bottom picture, you have the biggest coal mine in Poland, the biggest surface coal mine in Bełchatów. And guys, as you can see, there is pretty nothing growing in here. There are no trees, no rivers, no forests, no meadows, no animals live in here because the conditions are just not good. Very characteristic about element about the industrial landscape are the chimneys because there are lots of factories that they burn something, that they release some kind of fumes. So we build chimneys so we won't suffocate ourselves close to the ground. Also, railways, because we produce something, we need to provide materials, and then we need to somehow take it away from the factory. Guys, places where there's the industrial landscape are usually polluted. Here, because of all the fumes that are coming from the chimneys, they contain chemicals that will go back to the surface of Earth with the rain, and in many cases, they are toxic. We are lucky that nowadays there are laws that state that just emitting those toxins right into the atmosphere is forbidden in most of the cases. So there have to be filters that catch out all the toxic fumes and chemicals, but still the impact of industry on the land is huge. And guys, let's go back. Let's go to this place. Some of you might know. Okay, sometimes we break something. When we use the resources, when we transform the landscape, there are some side effects. And this is one of the most famous ones. This is the Aral Sea. Actually, it's not a sea, it's a lake, but it's just called the sea because it used to be so big. It's located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and this area above this lake was designated as the place where there will be cotton farms. But the problem is that this region is basically a kind of desert. So there is not plenty of water in here. So they decided that, well, we're going to use surface waters and we're going to pump water from rivers right onto the cotton fields. But what they didn't predict is the fact that the rivers, they supplied the Aral Sea with water. What happened? This is the picture from 1960. This is the picture from 2000 something, 2010, let's say. Anyway, guys, what happened? People have collected all the water that was supposed to go directly to this RLC, and it turned out that the RLC just disappeared. In the period of 37 years between 1960 and 1997, 90% of the lake just disappeared. The water just evaporated and the lake disappeared. It split into few pieces, but this is the same area as the lake used to be. So, guys, it was that huge. It was just as big as a sea, and now those are only remains of this. This was all once filled with water. And this is the case where we just break a part of environment. But sometimes we are able to fix it. And this process of fixing an once degraded, once destroyed piece of land is called land reclamation, czyli po polsku rekultywacja. And guys, this happens mostly in places where we have industry. So coal mines or quarries where we just dig out some stone for building purposes. Anyway, uh, we sometimes use those places and try to bring them back to the state as close to natural as possible. So guys, here for instance, this place is not a lake. This is a former coal mine. So there was a hole in the ground, and then it was when the mine was closed, the hole was just filled with water, and an artificial body of water was created. As you can see here at the banks of this, there are some plants. They have been planted by people. So we have started a forest on the banks of a so-called lake, because this is not a lake, this is artificial. But we are doing our best to bring it back to the natural state. Sometimes we just, when we dig out, for instance, coal from the mines, from underneath the ground, this is not the pure coal. This is mixed with some other rocks that we don't need, and we have plenty of them. So, what do you do with this? You basically pile them up. And guys, we are left with piles of debris, with piles of rocks in the landscape. But this example from Warsaw shows that you can do something nice out of it. This is Górka Szczęśliwicka and it's in Warsaw. So it was basically a pile of debris that nobody needed after some demolitions and after some other renovations. Anyway, they just covered it with soil and then they built the ski track on this. And now this artificial hill is serving a different purpose. There is that unwanted debris, but we can use this area once again.